controversial topics in simple conversation. So, so here's the thing I was thinking about. So, one of the things that we've been talking about is this whole idea of being controlled and having being told where to go and what to do and how to think. And last week we talked about the idea that, oh, it's hot outside. It's really hot, so you can't do anything and you can't go anywhere. So I was thinking about it from the perspective of Torah and this idea that when you talk about climate change, so the original, and this should be of interest to everybody that listens, because I know that you and I both have for many years been dealing with many people that consider themselves B'nai Noach. So this relates to that, because one of the original times that we see where you could talk about climate change was during the Mabul, during the flood uh, with Noach, and this idea that um, not only the idea of climate change, but as it relates to sort of a new set of rules and regulations. We know that Adam and Chava, when they were in Gan Eden, that they were told not to eat from a particular tree. Um, but we don't so much see like all of these rules and regulations. It only seems like after Hashem decides to not sort of remake the world, but sort of recreate the world. Like, in other words, he didn't destroy everything, but we didn't so much have rules and regulations. What does it say in the time of Noah? That there was lawlessness. So that there was this idea that really there weren't so much rules and regulations set in motion. Even when you see Cain killing his brother, Hashem could have destroyed him, but didn't. Because maybe he didn't know the punishment. We have in the Talmud the idea of, how does it say again? Onesh, Shamanu, Azhara, Minayin. This idea that, we like, where do we know we've learned this, but where's the punishment come from? So I guess where, all of these things are floating around in my mind as it relates to global warming and climate change and New World Order and all these things, that it seems like Hashem already started setting us in motion towards this thing. And at the end of the day, I think for me, it comes down to, and it's going to sound strange, it looks like I'm coming from all different directions with all these different concepts and tying it together with this idea of happiness. And most people would say, well, what do you mean? How does this have anything to do with happiness? And I think it comes down to it. I want to hear your opinion on it. I think it comes down to, for me, in the end, we've come from this very simple place of the original climate change, this original setup of an organization and a structure by Hashem and how things should be. And we see the increase of technology, even in the time of Noah, when they start to make tools and they start to plant vineyards and everything else, to now we depend on gadgets and we depend on this greater technology that we have for happiness, when we have a very simple set of rules and regulations and a structure that was set up for us to be happy. That's my premise for tonight.
I am the only thing that I think a person can relate to. Let's I'll bring a certain explanation. A person has a soul and has a body. So like the body can feel very comfortable to be told what to do and like to have rules, and you have to work 8 till 5 every day and on. Like a person can get used to that kind of work, and even if it's labor, it becomes comfortable. Like he has a method, he has a way, he has a routine. Like things are good for him. Like he can be okay with that. But the soul is so free that can never relate to this kind of rules that are not godly rules. Rules that have been set by human beings can be comfortable to the body because they might answer the body needs even. But the soul receives its life, its energy, its power only when it's fulfilling its spiritual purpose. So when we saw that Hashem set rules and after a while set more rules after certain occasions in history, like the flood, and later on after um, the Exodus and coming out of Egypt, and gave us the Ten Commandments, and then later on Moshe is explaining all the 613 mitzvot, like in general, bringing more rules of trials and on. And we see that the sages came later on and established the Shulchan Aruch, the Gemara, and the Shulchan Aruch later on with laws and explanations to details how to follow each and every halakha and on. Those expressions of godly rules, they came to feed our souls. But our bodies find those spiritual rules hard to keep. So there is a struggle always who to surrender to. Are we surrendering to our environment, to the world, to the so-called reality of our life, or to the voice of our souls? And the voice of our souls is like always aiming us to connect to Hashem and never to surrender to laws of people. For an example, the states and the governments always presenting us to us ourselves as if we're free people. They're always telling you you are a civilian, you have your rights, and there are people who are fighting for the individual rights and fighting for the rights of the poor, of the widows, of the soldiers, of the like whatever. Even like it's increasing, people are like for gay rights, whatever. Like it's increasing, that as if really someone cares about your freedom, while all the system built in a way that you cannot do anything without receiving permission, and you must ask the authorities for anything you want to do. You cannot build a house, you cannot bury the dead people, you cannot go to a doctor if you haven't paid your insurance. Like nothing. You have to pay almost half of your income as taxes. You have to obey the laws of traffic, and you cannot open a porch, you cannot open a window without receiving a permission from the city hall. Like in any life, you cannot get married without having it registered in the books. A baby was born, he needs to get a serial number, that's his ID number. It's like we are so not free when we are looking to the outside, to the reality of people, of the system, of the governments, of the governments, that it's a joke. If a person that is born is receiving a social security number or an ID number, it means that he is receiving a serial number. It means that he's a product, that he is part of a system. Now that's sick. That is sick. That is like already a big wake-up call to everyone to understand where that system takes us to. Because climate changes. I don't see no climate changes. It's true. I'm not that old, but in my 45 years of life, in the summer it was always super hot, and in the winter it was also
always cold.
and every winter and every summer, everyone are saying it's never been so cold before. It's never been so hot before. Every summer, it's not getting hotter. Just we may be getting softer.
It's maybe we're getting older, and look, when I was younger, when I first got married, yeah, the joke is that when we got married, I would have the mazgan on because I was always hot, and my wife would always wear a sweater because she was cold. And now that we're older, I'm the one with a blanket. My wife is the one that's hot all the time. So, you know, so it, I think a lot of it has to do with that kind of thing. I'm thinking about when you talk about the body and the soul. By the way, before I get into that, I mean, in Israel, of all places, Teodat Zahut, we all have that number, and everybody knows that number off the top of your head, and you can't do anything. Anywhere you go to Beit Cholim, you go to the hospital, you go to the Kupat Cholim, to your health fund, to the bank, to anything. What's the first thing they do is, you know, what's your
Scan,
Teodat Zahut?
scan
What's
your
your number?
serial number,
What's
checking
your
your phone.
number? What's your number? Put in your number. Type in your number. Tell us your number. What? You don't have a name. I'm not, Yitzchak Michelson. I'm shalosh 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 shmona shmona echad shmona. That's who I am in Israel. And think about this. Not only Teodat Zehu, but when you're talking about being controlled during COVID, when COVID was really bad in Israel, I know people who flew back from America, Israelis, and the next day after they flew in, Mishtara, the police, called them on their cell phone and said, "We're outside. Please have everybody come out on their merpeset so
Right,
we can see who's here in the house."
right, right. Because there
This,
were rules for isolation. You had
right.
to go be
So,
indoor for 2 weeks, even if you're not sick.
so anyway, in thinking about this idea of the body and the soul. So Rebbe Nachman, a lot of what Rebbe Nachman teaches, he would teach about different parts of the body. And he would relate different parts of the body to different midot, to all kinds of attributes in our nature and so forth. I started to write another book a few years ago, which I haven't. This is my style of writing. I write and then I take a break and then I write, and sometimes it takes me years, um, even to do a few pages. But it's interesting that I started to write this book, and I looked at it the other day. I haven't looked at it in about maybe 8 or 9 months. And I started reading what I had written already about it. And what is the basis of the book? The basis of the book is the concept in talking about the body and the soul that, and my connection, I love to make the connection with science, that even science, in addition to Judaism, is learning that the heart is a much more intelligent organ than the brain. And so if you think about it, I'm using that term, think about it, if we did an experiment and we sat down with a group of people, and you and I, Rav Dror, were sitting on one side of the table, and we had 10 or 15 people on the other side of the table, and we asked them to point to who they are. Would they point here or would they point here? They would point at their chest. This is who I am. They would point at their heart. They wouldn't point at their brain. And the point that I'm trying to make is that the heart is much closer to where the root of our soul is. And what I mean by this idea of a much more intelligent organ is that not only is it an intelligent organ, but when you think about the creation of Hashem, imagine how priceless, in talking about gadgets and the revolution of technology and everything else. Imagine being able to produce a pump that has no power source whatsoever, and yet the pump works perpetually until it stops working. But it's basically a gadget, the most amazing gadget, that's the creation of Hashem, that has no. Now, some people would argue that it has electrical sparks, and we see that kind of thing related to electricity. But really, it is a self sustaining pump. And so it not only
Most
has this
scientific,
physical concept of intelligence, but it is also very much the root of who we are.
Most likely going to
And
work over like 70, 80 years. It's like most people are like crossing the 80s. So it's like it really gives a good work.
right. So the idea is how do you want to think today? Do you want to think with your head? Do you want to think with your brain? Or do you want to think with your heart? And there are many phrases related to that. All kinds of ideas related to this concept of the heart versus the brain. And I think that that's a significant question that each person needs to ask themselves, not only as it relates to rules and regulations and things like that, but the most important thing, which is this concept of happiness. One of the things we talked about last week too was this idea that we talk about Rebbe Nachman, and we talk about Rebbe Nachman as it relates to joy and happiness and clapping and dancing and singing and everything else. But remember, the whole idea of being able to say that there's no despair in the world can only come from somebody who has experienced great depths of despair. And so I want to introduce another thing because it just hit the top of my head as we're talking about this. And I think you might agree with me. Traditionalists in Judaism are going to hate what I'm about to say. But in this idea of Hashem suddenly deciding to change things up, that he gave certain rules and regulations to Adam and Chava, but he didn't necessarily do anything to Cain in that idea, and he only introduced sort of this new concept of regulations. Would it be hard to say that Hashem himself learns from his own experiences?
Well, I truly don't mind saying that, and
I know you don't mind. That's why I said
I
it.
will happily gonna get into it, because I think that people are not appreciating themselves, and because of that, they choose to give a certain figure. They create an imaginary figure to Hashem, to the maker, and minimizing him to a certain role that they feel comfortable with, a role that is not challenging them in their own lives. So one can make Hashem the king, one will make him a ruler, one will make him a compassionate father, one will make him the forgiving one will make him the punisher. Like everyone will set Hashem to be one of the things, while Hashem is maybe all those things and way more, and maybe not those things at all in other ways, in different, from different point of views. But in reality, people disrespect themselves means they're not appreciating how godly they are, how godly we are, and therefore we are like closing the gates for Hashem's light to shine. We're rather to say, no, Hashem, He's the spiritual one, He's the king, He's the ruler, controller, and we are just human beings, and we're limited, and we're like, we need His help, we need His support, or like we are too tired, we cannot serve Him. Like people can make up any theory that they want to feel comfortable with in their laziness, like, and to justify their laziness and their tiredness, and to find a reason why not to work hard, why not to become a man of God, a godly person, a real angel on earth. But if people would understand our greatness, that we have a godly soul within us, they would understand that many of our emotions and our qualities and our powers are actually godly powers, means that they are powers of Hashem, like our eyes. We can see. How can you see? Hashem has eyes, and in the power of the eyes of Hashem, we can see. Hashem, He sees, like the verses are saying, "Ene Hashem asher hema meshotetot b'chol haaretz." The eyes of Hashem are wandering around the world, and we can hear because Hashem, He listens to the prayers. Hashem shomea. And Hashem is walking, like that it's written that Hashem was walking in the garden. And Hashem is talking, like he said, the first commandment, Anochi Adonai Elohecha, and the second one, Lo yeh lachem elokim acherim al panai, you won't replace me with another God, and on. Like, so Hashem is talking, Hashem is breathing, Hashem is angry, Hashem is sad. Like all those are verses. Vayit'atzev Hashem el libo. Hashem became sad, became upset, and on. So all those feelings and emotions, we feel them, and we say, no, those are our feelings, those are our emotions, and like limiting ourselves to be like creatures, barely creations. And Hashem, no, Hashem, he's beyond, he's beyond, he's beyond. And by that, creating distance between us and him, and separating us from him, and separating him from us as well. And just stucking ourselves in a position that we cannot spiritually develop and grow, and cannot even receive help from him in our mindsets. Instead of understanding Hashem is great, and Hashem has great qualities, and he planted those amazing qualities within us, and therefore we can connect and relate to him based on our attributes, based on our wisdom, based on our amazing thoughts, and on and on and on. So a person can really rise to the heights if he will allow himself to do so.
And this is why it you know, in a way, I already knew that you would be able to elaborate on something that I knew you already agreed with me on, and I knew that you would be able to frame it in a way that all of the people that are listening to us would sort of understand it in a very simple way. And it's true when you recognize the idea that you are chedek Elokei mima'al, that you have a portion of Hashem from above, then you shouldn't be able to separate yourself out. And so that when you think about the attributes of Hashem, when you think about the idea that he chose to, now, I mean, in some ways, you know, the idea that, where we can separate out, is the fact that when Hashem decided to create the world out of his mercy, or out of his desire to give of himself, you know, and give of his love in an altruistic way, then certainly we don't, in that way, we have a long way to go. You know, it's like Rav Ashlag, you know, talks about this in a nutshell version of the Kabbalistic concept of, you know, we have a selfish will to receive for ourselves alone. And the only way to really become like Hashem is to turn that selfish will and desire to receive for ourselves alone, and change it into a desire to receive in order to give. But the truth is that we have the potential for that. That's what I think I want people to understand, that when I say something is controversial, as Hashem learns from his own experiences, why should that be crazy to somebody? If Hashem set up the world and then saw that the world did not work because of our own limitations as human beings, and he's decided, okay, look, I need to change things up a little bit. I need to set some order. I need to put rules and regulations. So he experienced something.
The true Kabbalah is full of explanations around that
Right.
topic, full of explanations around that
Right.
topic that Hashem saw, and Hashem changed, and Hashem evolved, and Hashem like changed even big purposes. Like for an example, it was not allowed to kill any animal for eating purposes in the past. And when the children of Noah came out of the ark, so then Hashem permitted and just explained how to do it, that ritual slaughtering was needed before killing an animal, and not to eat an organ from a live animal. So,
or the torn limb, yeah.
So you see that the Torah is a living proof for that Hashem is learning with us and helping us and assisting us.
So this is I think the main thing in typically what you and I always try to do for ourselves and for others is to introduce these topics, but then say, okay, we understand, we hear, what's the solution? So for me, the only thing that I'm trying for myself and what I want to give over to people tonight is this idea that you have the potential for this, that your life experiences are not just your own life experiences, but it's also the life experiences of that godly part of you that's within you. So that sometimes, and this is a lesson that I had to learn because I've shared transparently some of my own struggles. But I have to tell you, and again, some people are not going to like what I have to say, but I came to the realization that there are times when even the dark places that I find myself struggling with is sometimes Hashem suffering, being suffered through me. And that verse always comes to mind in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah, where it says, "And in our sufferings He suffers."
בכל צרה, בכל
Um,
צער, right?
Ken, so it's like you have to understand that if you're a person that's struggling today, if you're a person that's suffering, and you think, oh, nobody understands my life, nobody understands what I'm going through, there is somebody that understands what you're going through because
And
he's
here,
going through it with you, or you're experiencing it as a result of what he's experiencing and what he's learning and how he's changing.
right,
And that's why you're changing, and that's why you're experiencing what you're
right.
experiencing.
In 100% it's true. And Hashem is not looking at it from outside. It's not like, yeah, I see that you suffer. Hashem is saying, I suffer with you. I'm with you inside your heart, inside your feelings, inside your body. I'm feeling you from within, and I'm surrounding you from outside. And I am you, and you are me. Like that's exactly what Hashem is telling us. And like you said, from one side of it, Hashem is with us in our sorrow, but that's the outcome. In the beginning, really, we are the reflection of Hashem in His world, because Hashem looked at the Torah and created the world. And when the Shekhinah is going out to the Galut, so then the people of Israel are going to the Galut. So you see that Hashem Himself is rolling in the streets, and then and then it's being seen by us, through us, that we are rolling in the streets. It's a very deep concept. I really hope that many people in our audience are able to comprehend and to relate to it. I think that maybe we
It,
need to talk more about the emotional aspect of it. Maybe that will open it to more people to understand.
it is. It is a very deep concept, but at the same time, the other part of it is that uh, you know
People,
when I find myself in a deep struggle, one of the things that I've learned to do is just from strictly a physical standpoint is to lower my expectations. Uh, And so what I mean by that is that, for instance, if you're going to talk about deep concepts in Kabbalah, so I could turn this into a very deep thing and say the whole process is this idea of raising Malchut to Bina, right? That's ultimately what we're trying to do. Ultimately, we're trying to take Malchut and connect it to Bina. The problem is that there are all these steps that you have to go through to get from Malchut to Bina. You have all these other sfirot that you have to go through in order to get that. So when I'm talking about lowering expectations is nobody can expect. And that's why I'm saying that each one of us have to lower our own expectations for ourselves. I'm not talking about that person out there that disappoints you. I'm not talking about your business partner or your spouse or whoever it is that disappoints you. I'm talking about you who disappoint yourself. You need to lower your expectations for yourself and understand that you have the potential for this, but as we say in Hebrew, la'at la'at, slowly, slowly. You're not going to go from today, from the level of Malchut, to the level of Binah tomorrow. You're going to have to go through the process. You're going to have to go through the struggles and the suffering and the galut, the exile, and go through what you're going through. But if you lower your expectations and recognize that all you have to do is take one foot and put it in front of the other tomorrow, then you've moved one step closer
I think
to
that,
that real.
you know, a person is always desiring higher levels, always desiring um, tables of kings, and always desiring money of billionaires and like big castles and on and on and on. I think that after a while, when a person is living his life in that effort of fulfilling his goals and imaginary dreams that are not really realistic, then he comes back home and he finds himself with his spouse and finds himself with his children and finds himself in his own comfort zone, in his sofa, in his living room, petting his dog or reading his book or like living normal life. And then he realized that that task, that those like operations, those missions that he set for himself, those high goals were not really for him. Even if he's reaching those heights, he finds himself lonely in those places and without his family and not really complete with himself and with his actions and with the things that he did to achieve those things. Some of the things were not clean or not right. And then he's checking himself, and then he goes back home and starts to appreciate simple life more than before. So I think that when we're talking about lower expectations, in the end of that humble process, we will find ourselves much happier and that we achieved much more. It's not really lowering expectations, it's to go off the clouds and the imaginary world of our illusions and the ideas that the evil inclination is putting in our minds for us to hope for things that are really not meant to be. And then we go back home to our family, to our community, to our nation, our nationality, to our land. And we live simple life. And over there, we can really fulfill our destiny and to reveal our true potential as we row together. That we can really like bring the light out, the light of our souls that is treasured within us, and really to bring it out to practice and to the light.
So everybody should have goals. So I'm gonna for me I'm gonna close with this. I'll tell you a funny story about this. Uh, in the idea of being a speaker, a public speaker, and going around and teaching and speaking all over, traveling with you, traveling myself, speaking around the world. I used to go and take seminars sometimes on public speaking. And I went to a seminar once. This is many, many, many years ago. And the speaker told us that there was a way to achieve the goals. And he used an acronym. And he said, you should go and buy a can of this. It's a food product. And he said, you should buy a can of this and should keep it on your desk. And then this way you'll always remember about this. So what was it? It was funny. Why is it funny? Because it's trafe. It's called spam. I don't know if everybody knows what spam is, but spam is it comes in a can and it's like made with like the worst imaginable stuff. It's like pork and it's like really nasty, nasty stuff. And people would look at me like I was crazy because I had this can of spam on my desk, and they would like think, "What is with this guy with this trafe on his desk?" Well, why did I have it? Because he said that when you set goals, he said, think about the word spam. He goes, your goals should be small, they should be specific, they should be practical, they should be achievable, and they should be measurable. So this is why I had this can of this disgusting
This
food on my desk.
humbling,
So that
humbling can.
So I would so I'm telling everybody that it's good to have when I'm talking about this idea of lowering expectations, it's like Rav Dror was saying, take your head out of the clouds and think about spam. Your goals should be small, they should be specific, they should be practical, they should be achievable, and they should be measurable. This way, when you see that, when you set a small goal for yourself and it's practical and you see that you're able to achieve it and it's you can measure it, then you see that little by little every day you're making progress, every day you're getting closer and closer to the potential that you have and to the human being, the husband, the father, the teacher, the business partner that you want to be. You will get to eventually, but not tomorrow.
Also, that the spirituality must have a vessel to be contained, and the vessel must be like physically stronger than the material that is within it. So spirituality must have physical vessels, like the Rambam said, a healthy spirit in a healthy body. So your body must be healthy, and for that you must not reach the stars. Like, you must have normal lifestyle. You have to eat healthy, and you have to have a family, and you have to have like certain things. Like, you have to take showers, you have to keep yourself clean, you have to sleep well. Those things are the foundations for your spiritual structure. And there is no way in the world that a person will achieve high levels without having those foundations, healthy and stable foundations. So a person in times of imaginations, he thinks that those physical terms are not required for him, because he is here for spiritual reasons, for spiritual tasks, but not realizing that he's breaking his own vessels. And even if he will feel some excitement in the beginning, after a while, he might find himself losing a lot. I had a friend that for a very long time was listening to my classes, and we were talking. And in a certain day, he achieved a certain financial goal that he was desiring for a very long time. And I must say, unfortunately, in that day, that person flipped. Like, our friendship was not, didn't mean anything to him, except for that in one day, he left the position of being a student of mine and hearing from me to become my teacher, my spiritual sponsor. Of course, not the donor to the project anymore. That's it. Like, in one day, everything flipped, and he became, in his mind, in a higher position and started giving me advice. How will I also be able to manifest money and achieve any amount that I need, and on? And all became like, all turned up that way, because that he had a miracle. And he really had a miracle. The question is, when you get that miracle, if you have the vessels for it. If you would have the vessels for it, it wouldn't damage him. It wouldn't kill so many good things along the way. But now, unfortunately, and that's my humble opinion, when he didn't have the vessel for all that bounty, his mind just drifted and keep on drifting. Hopefully, the balloon won't get too high close to the sun to explode and find its way back home. Um, Hope he will find his way back home in one piece. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, this is always a problem. Um, with the whole concept of Shvirat Kelim, this idea of the shattering of the vessels came as a result of the light of Hashem was too great for even the vessels that He originally created for for it, and as a result, they shattered. And this is why we have what we have. This is why we have this fill. This is why you have to go from level to level,
Right.
in from one step to the next. There and there's nothing to say. I mean, look, the truth is that sometimes a vessel that's been broken, that's repaired, is even stronger than the vessel that was never broken in the first place. So keep that in mind as well. And I know Rav Dror agrees with me on that. So that if, in many ways, you should understand that what we're saying is, if you're a broken person, you now have a greater ability to receive the light and to receive the bounty now that you've been broken and repaired, than before, when you thought that you were, an undamaged vessel.
Beyond this world. Thank you.
Beyond.
I think I will always call you Ira Michaelson. Rabbi
Oh,
Yitzchak Michaelson is. I
yeah.
think for me, you're gonna stay Ira.
Okay.
Maybe I'm here to uplift those sparks that you left behind in that Ira area. Who knows?
Well, many people have heard the story. Why did I change? Why did I stop using Ira? It's because in Israel, Ira is, especially if it's not spelled correctly in Hebrew, is a feminine name. There are so many Russians in Israel, and Ira is short for Irina, which is a
Lo
very popular
irara.
Russian.
Lo irara. I won't see anything bad. What do you mean? What are you talking
So
about? Lo
so
irara.
so so if you look at Ira spelled Aleph Yud Resh He, this is feminine. If they would have spelled it Aleph Yud Yud Resh He, then it would have been Ira, and it would have been masculine.
Yeah,
So it became talking about Teodat Zahut. So every time I went into an office in Israel, when I moved to Israel, when I made Aliyah, so every
yeah.
time I would go into an office and they would call Ira, they would all start talking to Leah, my wife. So I said, I can't do this anymore. So I changed my name
Yeah,
legally to my
in
Hebrew,
Israel, Yitzhak.
which is
In
Yitzhak.
Israel, Yitzhak is definitely easier. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Yitzhak Michaelson. We
Right.
appreciate your friendship. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
Mike.
It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you
We
for
need
help.
to continue maybe on the emotional aspect later, as we said,
Amen.
maybe to continue.
I'm sure that people are like really in the need of hearing even just simple conversations, how many people are like home and alone and wishing to have more companion, to have more friends, to have more of a community. This is why we try as much as we can to build the online community for our followers. You can all join us at the emuna.com, Emuna website, our great website, and our um, online community that is called Emuna Circle. Please check the information at our website and sign up for that. We have
Mhm.
many courses and books and services and great activities that you can take part with us. And thank you for watching us. And hopefully, we're gonna see each other again next week. Hopefully, Rod Bryant, our friend and source of light, will join us next week. Hopefully,
God willing.
uh, and that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Be well.